What is going on, everybody? This is Dr. Grimmett from Forge Physio. Today we are going over our ankle clock. So ankle clock is a drill just like it sounds. Standing in the middle of a clock per se. You don't actually have a clock, but if I'm facing the camera, 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, I'm gonna have 3 o'clock and then 9 o'clock, right? And here in a minute, I'm gonna grab a dowel so I can show you guys how to create a little bit of a constraint to get more load into the tissue that we want, or we can just simply use a wall. So I'll show you what both of those look like. But the idea here is that your foot and the joints of the foot are responsible for different types of motion. So if I can use a clock as an analogy and go through different motions, I'm gonna get a little bit more rotations above and below the ankle joint, which can help facilitate more of that dorsiflexion. So plantar flexion is me pointing my toe away from my body. Dorsiflexion is me pulling my toe toward my body. Whenever we go to squat or do a dynamic movement where I have to be able to load into my lower extremity, I need to be able to move into dorsiflexion. So this is the drill that's gonna help us be able to do so. Also, strengthen the foot and unlock that ankle foot complex a little bit more. So if I'm doing it with no assistance, it's gonna put a lot more demand on my balance, and I'm typically not a huge fan of this. But say you have really, really good balance and we wanna go to more of a advanced progression of it, then we're gonna go in space. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to keep my entire foot in contact with the ground. And I like to initiate the motion by thinking about driving my heel through the floor and just letting my knee bend while keeping equal foot pressure in my toes. A lot of times I'll see people clawing at the ground with their toes, and I don't like that because of the anatomy of those deep flexor muscles in your toes coming up into that foot complex. And a lot of times it'll make the arch more rigid, which puts way more load at just the ankle joint and doesn't allow the rest of the foot to do its job. So trying to relax the toes by putting load into the heel, and then as the knee goes forward, think about letting your foot splay out or spread out by putting pressure through the pad of the big toe and the pinky toe. So I'm just simply reaching out in front of me, driving into as much range of motion as I can without feeling like my heels are gonna pop off the ground or feeling my toes claw the ground. And for me, I feel a stretch in my calf that limits me from going further. So that would be my 12 o'clock. And then 3 o'clock, I would go out to the side. Same idea with the foot pressure. And then 6 o'clock, I'm reaching back. I can typically get a little bit deeper, and this is a little bit more hip dominant because I'm doing a hinge. And then when I go to 9 o'clock, I'm reaching across my body and really trying to sit into this back hip. The other piece is we've done arm drivers with this before. So if I'm really trying to get my body to be able to shift into that foot, if I put my hands out in front of me, it's gonna allow me to sit back more and think about driving my knee as far forward as possible. If I reach with my leg and I reach toward the ground instead of out, that's gonna load my hip. If I'm doing 3 o'clock, I can reach with my arms, which will create rotation and makes me pronate a little bit more, which is easier to help people get into that dorsiflex position sometimes. And this is where the wall or the dowel comes in handy, which is what we'll go over in just a second. So I'll just use a squat rack, actually, that's easier. So if I'm at a squat rack, I can hold on and I can rep out my 12 o'clock. Right now I have a constraint because I'm taking away my balance as my limiting factor, and I can put more load or emphasis into that foot ankle complex without any sort of compensation. So I could go 12 o'clock, and then typically if I'm gonna go 3 o'clock, I'll face the other way. And then this is another one that you can use pieces of equipment and use it as drivers. So say I'm gonna go to 3 o'clock and I'm working on this left side, I can stand on my left, reach out, and I can reach through, and it creates a little bit of rotation and helps me put pressure on the inside of my foot, which is where we get more dorsiflexion from. So, and then the last version, which is my personal favorite, is just kind of using the wall. If you get too close to the wall, you can't really reach out in front of you really far, like you can't use your off limb to drive the motion. So I'll just typically hold the leg up and then think about bringing my knee toward the wall for my 12 o'clock while keeping the heel down. And then 3 o'clock, I'm going out. And then here I can add that rotation that we were talking about by keeping one hand high and kind of reaching through. And then I can go back for 12 o'clock, or excuse me, 6 o'clock. And then I can reach under for 9 o'clock. And that whole time, in my opinion, this drill is really dependent on your foot pressure. The second the heel loses pressure, we're gonna get a little bit technical here, but the second the heel loses pressure, the calcaneus, which is the heel bone, doesn't plantar flex. If it doesn't plantar flex, it doesn't allow for the foot to relatively unlock and create more of a pronation position, okay? So really do your best to ask yourself when you're doing this drill, where's my foot pressure at? Am I keeping pressure in my heel, and am I keeping equal foot pressure throughout my foot to be able to actually unlock my foot and get the motion that we want, so the tibia or the lower leg bone is allowing itself to progress forward and give us dorsiflexion.